Good morning, everyone. This is Mr. Linares. First walkthrough in the shop. A few cars I'm going to show you, introduce you to what a car is, looks like, how to find major parts on the car, ID some components, and how to do the basic anatomy and geography of a car. If you notice that this video happens to stop and start quite a bit, that's because I'm either setting things up, moving little parts here and there, or taking a break or what have you, so please disregard that. If you have any questions, by all means, go ahead and contact me via Remind or the school email. Okay, here we go. This is our shop. This is the D9 lab. Good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Linares. It's our first walkthrough in our shop. These are the D9 labs, part of the D building. This is our auto shop. As you can see, we have plenty of blaze. We go ahead and we have drop-down TVs and screens that you're going to be seeing soon. Some cars in here, some tool carts, tire changing equipment, things like that. All in good time. You'll see all the stuff. For today, we're going to be talking about the geography and anatomy of a car to see where everything's at. Start discussing cars in general. I have a couple vehicles here to look at to get you started, as by no means the end-all be-all of it. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll talk about this Eclipse that's right there and that Subaru that's over there. Okay, then after we go through those parts, we're going to go ahead and stop the video, and I will likely make, say, an oil change video, and then eventually tire changing, tire rotation, all the basic maintenance stuff, and to keep making videos as time goes on. Hopefully we're going to start involving the students once we get you guys back to campus and what have you. But in the meantime, it's the me show. If you hear that loud roaring sound in the back, that's our one of our shop fans. It is way too hot right now to be operating without a fan, so please bear with it. If for whatever reason I post this video and it doesn't work out for the sound, I will very likely go ahead and just go straight to video and re-narrate it. So here we go. Okay, so here we have an 07 Mitsubishi Eclipse. I might be an 06. We'll find out the difference here in a minute. Okay, and as we look at the front of the car, you'll see we have the hood up, and that this vehicle is a convertible. Okay, and it is essentially a coupe, convertible coupe. All right, let's take a walk around it. It is a little dirty from sitting around. Okay, obvious reasons. We've been out of school and lots of dust and everything have been collecting and what have you. We do wash our cars here on campus every now and again. It is part of the class. All right, so here we go. When we start talking about a vehicle, most everything is referenced from the driver's point of view. That is to say, if you were in the driver's seat right here, all of the left, right, front, and back is related to the driver. Okay? So first things first, we want to be able to identify the vehicle. That starts off with what is called a VIN number. The VIN number can be found in the door tag area, okay, the door jamb area rather. You can see that the VIN number here has been wiped out a little bit. You have the manufacturing date right there. Sometimes you'll have extra stickers and things to show you the VIN. Right here is our tire information tag. Here we have the interior of the vehicle, the driver's seat, the stick shift, center console area, our cluster. Right there in that screen is where the odometer would show up, which shows you the mileage of the vehicle. This vehicle's battery is dead from sitting, so we will get that jumped up in a little bit, and I'll show you some more of the functions here at some point, okay? If you can't find the VIN number on the door, down here, okay, in a vehicle, you will have the VIN typically in front of the driver on the dashboard. Sometimes it's very hard to see depending on the company and depending on the font or the colors that they use. This one is just simply etched in a little stamped steel, so it's fairly easy to see. Sometimes not so much. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we're looking at the car. We talk about the car in terms of the front and the rear back there, which you obviously should understand. When we talk about the left and right, again, we're dealing with the driver. So this side that's right here is the left side. When you talk about the sections of the car, we tend to talk in quarters. So this would be the driver's side front quarter. This would be the driver's side rear quarter. The rear of the vehicle. The passenger side rear quarter. And the passenger side front quarter. You can also call these left and right, again, based off of where the driver's sitting. Now, as we look at the vehicle here, the most important part of our particular class here for the automotive technology end of things, the very first year, is the engine compartment. The top of the engine compartment has the hood. The hood will typically have what's called an emissions label. The emissions label will have information in it regarding the emission status of the car and the engine size. Okay? This particular engine is a 3.8 liter V6. Sometimes it even says it right on the engine. We call it a V6 because it has 6 cylinders, and the configuration of the engine is generally shaped as a V. Looking around the engine compartment, we're going to take a look at where the major fluids are on the vehicle. Okay, this is the main preventive maintenance things that we take a look at. Okay, let me get a rag, and then we're going to go ahead and get back to it. All right, the first part we look at is the engine oil. When you look at the engine oil, you have a dipstick. You pull up the dipstick, and then you go ahead and you take a look at it. Now, we have some clean oil in there. Now, the big problem we run into with this is that maybe the engine is ran or something like that. So what you're going to do is wipe this off. Let me go ahead and take care of this. I'll be right back. Now you see we have a clean dipstick. You take the dipstick, you put it into the dipstick tube, you slide it all the way down, and then carefully pull it back up. Do not allow that to go upside down. You want to hold it sideways so you can see the oil. It's kind of hard to see because the oil's nice and clean, but we're in between those two dots, which means that there is good oil in the car. This right here, this is the oil fill. You want to make sure that the quality of the oil, both on the dipstick and in the oil fill area here, are clean. That means it should be a golden color. As it ages, it'll start to get brown, and then if it starts to go bad, it'll turn generally a black color, and then if it goes really, really bad and it gets neglected, it'll turn jelly-like and become what's called sludge. If you see sticky brown in there, that would be varnish. We'll be seeing pictures of this online. Down in this area here, we have the belt. Okay, when you look at the belt, it's kind of hard to see from our vantage point here. Okay, you want to make sure that the belt is free of any cracks or anything like that. Let's go ahead and we're going to try to get a mirror in here and see if we can see a good belt. Okay? Sorry about that. Here we have the belt. You can see that the belt is a little bit worn, but not bad. There aren't any cracks, it is not glazed or shiny, and there's no dirt in it. That means you have a good belt. Now, if you have a worn belt that does not look terribly sharp anymore in those little ribs, as long as it's not making any squealing noises and that everything's intact, it's fine. However, if it starts to crack up or starts to make noise, squealing in the morning or squealing while it's operating, then you might want to change the belt. After you check your oil, you check your belt, you may want to check the coolant. There's no real particular order for this. Coolant can be checked in a coolant bottle in some vehicles. Other vehicles have a check right at the radiator like this. Make sure the vehicle is cool. Pop down on the cap, twist it. Oops, I'll get that later. And check the coolant. Notice it's a nice green color. Sometimes you'll have blue coolant or pink or orange or yellow coolant. Looking at that coolant quality, looking at the color there, you want to make sure that there's nothing really in it. Now it looks like there's a little bit of something in there, so let's see if that's something to worry about. I didn't see any debris in there, so we should be okay. A little bit of... This is the coolant cap, okay, also known as a radiator cap. Now sometimes vehicles have a remote bottle for their coolant recovery. This right here is another place to check the coolant on this vehicle to see if there's enough in there, and there is, that little green fluid that's on there. But this is also what's called an overflow bottle, okay? That happens, well, or an expansion tank. When the coolant expands too much from heat, then what will happen is the coolant will vent from that little tube right there over into that bottle, and when it needs more coolant, it'll suck it back in. How that works will be covered when we do cooling systems. However, the best place to check it, if you can on a car, is right at the radiator. You make sure that the vehicle is not hot when you open it. That means if you touch it, okay, and it is a little bit warm, I wouldn't mess with it. Wait till it's fairly cool to the touch. Now you go ahead and you push down on the cap, and you twist it, and then you open it, a little bit like a medicine bottle. You have the coolant in there, and there's a little bit of stuff in there, a little bit of corrosion flakes in there, not horrible. In general, that coolant looks good, okay? There's no rust, there's no metal particles in there. You don't see that the core in there, that piece underneath the green, that's a nice aluminum core. You don't see that that's all messed up. So all in all, this is serviceable coolant. Eventually I would want to flush it though if that little bit of particulate matter at the top persists. That indicates that there's a little tiny bit of corrosion starting, okay? Over here we have our brake fluid. Brake fluid you have to be careful with. You have to make sure that the area around the brake fluid cap in the brake fluid reservoir is relatively clean. You see this dust and everything around here, that's not too much trouble. Right there at the cap is where you want to worry about. Go ahead and get your cap and you unscrew it. You look inside, and from up here we don't really see any mess. We don't see a lot of fluid here. On the cap itself, we don't see any mess. We don't see any debris or gunk or anything like that. Push this to the side. Sometimes you can remove this little cup. And in this model, it looks like we cannot. So what we do is we look right there and we look at that fluid, and it appears to be a tiny, tiny bit brown, but it is not black. So what we're gonna do is take a flashlight, shine it on the other side of this, and see how well we're doing. However, before we leave our brake fluid reservoir, let's go ahead and close it, not too tight. Because you never, ever want to get any dust or water or anything in there. That has to be a sealed environment. Get a handy dandy flashlight here. Okay, get our flashlight and we look at it, and before we saw that it looked fairly brown. Now that we get some light shining into it, we can see it's a nice golden color and it's translucent, meaning light will pass through it. Okay, so we have good fluid. It is a good level. That seam in the middle that you see there, that would indicate where the fluid is starting to get a little bit low. When your brake fluid gets low, you either have a leak somewhere, in which case you'll notice really, really quick when you're driving the car, or perhaps your brakes are getting low, and when the brake pads wear out, it means the pistons that move the brakes travel farther, meaning that more fluid has to be used. So that's a good indicator that your brakes are getting low if your fluid is low, okay? Over here, we have our power steering fluid, okay? Now, just like the brake fluid, we shine through it. Brake fluid, power steering fluid is not going to be exactly translucent because it's fairly much the same stuff as automatic transmission fluid and really, really heavy. So it doesn't transmit light very well at all. But what we're going to do is, even though we have a good level there, you can see the max and the min and that it's towards the top, we want to check its quality. So we're going to unscrew this cap. Pull the cap off, put it to the side, and take a look down in there. And then when I look down in there, it is a fairly dirty brown color. Okay, and there should be a cherry red color. This indicates that this power steering fluid does need to be changed at some point, and I'll probably go ahead and save that for the class to do, okay? Right here we have our battery. When you're looking at a battery, you want to make sure it's not sticky and corroded on top. Okay, dirt is going to happen just from driving, okay? But still, it is a good idea to to wash your battery off every now and again. Now, you know that even though it's not really sticky looking, you see that shading right there, that difference, that staining over there, that does indicate that battery acid has been venting, and the gases inside the battery that build up have been expelled a little bit here and there. Okay, as I mentioned before, this battery is dead, and it may this may be indicative that the battery's been having problems and on its last legs. It's not uncommon for it to happen. Car batteries generally last about 3 to 5 years, but if they sit without being charged, that can kill them outright too from just not being charged long enough. Okay, so right here, when we get to the preventive maintenance and actually doing the procedures, we'll show you how to charge a battery, how to jump it, how to check it and everything. Okay, and the battery information that you need to identify what kind of battery you have is right here at the top on this label right here. Okay, that's really washed out, I'm sorry, right there. You can want to make sure you can see those numbers and digits and letters and what have you there. And sometimes it's obscured and you may have to remove this bracket in order to get to it, all right? But if you see your battery like this, you're going to wash it off a little bit, okay? Make sure nothing gets in there. These caps that are right here, underneath are where all the acid is in the battery, so you want to be super careful if you have to remove these caps to check it. Most batteries today do not have to be checked. Right here we have our air filter, which has been opened already. And when you go ahead and look at an air filter, a little difficult to do one-handed, you want to make sure that the air filter is fairly clean, doesn't have any heavy particles in it or anything like that, and that you can generally see the clean color of whatever paper it's made out of. It may be white or maybe tan, sometimes even blue, okay? You just want to make sure there's not a lot of mess on there or any punctures or rips, because if there's a puncture or a rip, it can get through this filter and end up getting into the engine, and where it can cause a lot of harm. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lift up the car and show you underneath a little bit. But before I do, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. That big assembly with the tubes up there and the red right here, that is the engine, okay? That is the main power plant of the car, and the purpose of the engine is to take chemical energy and convert it into mechanical energy, namely torque. When you talk about torque, you're talking about twisting or rotating force. What we can't see underneath all this right here is the transmission, which takes the power from the engine and delivers it out to the wheels. I'm going to go ahead and lift the vehicle up and show you the underside of the car. All right, here we go. This is the underside of a car. It's up on one of our lifts. Okay. Now, first things first, when you're lifting a car and you're using a lift, you need to make sure you're in the right spots. These pads need to be on what's called the pinch weld of the car, okay? To make sure that the vehicle is going to be lifted properly and not damage the car, and most importantly, not damage you. On the pinch welds at all four corners, front to back. Here, so let me change right here. You'll see that's where they need to be. Sometimes it's not exactly perfect, but as long as you're on there and it's working and not hurting anything, you're going to be good to go, okay? Setting up cars for the first time can be a bit challenging. From underneath, let's take a look at some of the things that we saw from up top. Here we have the engine, okay? This is the lower part of the engine. We have the lower part of the block and oil pan, the lower oil pan. We have the exhaust system right here, catalytic converter, exhaust pipe, on down to the mufflers and everything. You'll see that in some of your videos that you have, and materials. Up here you have your front accessory drive with the belt. You're going to see right here the air conditioning compressor, the crankshaft pulley over here, an idler pulley which basically just balances the belt tension out and the rotation of everything. Again, look at our belt, still good. Right here we have our oil filter. This cleans out the oil. So if I'm going to do an oil change, I'm going to come around here. I'm going to loosen that drain plug, drain out all my oil. Once the oil is drained, I'm going to come over here to the oil filter, unscrew this, let the oil drain out of that area, clean everything up, put my plug back in, tighten down my oil, put a new oil filter on with a little bit of oil around the seal, and tighten that up. And when you tighten up an oil filter, it's going to be all the way down by hand, plus 3/4 of a turn, okay? You're going to be seeing this at some point when I do an oil change video. There you have the back side of the brakes, and a drive axle, and a strut. The other side, the brake and rotors, okay, the brake caliper and rotors, the drive axle. Look on up there, we have our strut. Right here, lower control arms, okay. This big metal piece right here that goes across, back and forth. This way, it's our subframe. Right here we have our transmission. This is the part that goes ahead and takes power from the engine and transmits it out to those drive axles, which in turn go out to the wheels, okay? When you're checking your transmission fluid, okay, you have got fill plugs and drain plugs to deal with. Right here be our fill plug. We pull that out and put our finger in there to check to see what the fluid's at. Some transmissions have dipsticks. The older they are, the more likely are to have it. The newer they are, the less likely they are to have it. And you can see right here, okay, right here is where the clutch feeds into the transmission. This is a manual transmission, okay? Just a little bit of insight. Here we have an engine mount. Let's carry on back. You can see the floor pans. You can see the side ribs of the vehicle's construction, where the unibody comes together to the body and the frame are put together. We call that a unibody construction. The lines for brake and fuel. The exhaust system, where you've got your muffler and your resonator. Come on back here. This big plastic tub here is really a tank. It's our fuel tank. Let's go turn this around because it's hard to see with the sun. The rear subframe area, the rear control arms, the rear struts. I'm sorry, the rear shocks, I apologize. These are called coilover shocks. You can see various parts there. The brake caliper and rotors, upper control arm right there, my lower control arm right here, the subframe, the trunk pan where the spare tire is going to go. There's a whole world that goes into making a car work and making it strong enough to do its job and make it so you're safe while you're going down the road. There's lots of structures, lots of pieces, lots of systems. We're going to talk about them. Primarily the powertrain system now. That's mostly what Auto 1 is about, okay? We're going to be focusing mostly on the engine systems, okay? That is the engine, the intake, exhaust, lubrication, cooling, ignition and fuel systems, and then general preventive maintenance of the car, okay? So there's a lot more. This is just dipping your toe in. We have so much more to talk about as time goes on, okay? Before we end, let me go ahead and show you one little last piece that I kind of overlooked. But we have our wheel and tire right here. And that very first tag I showed you, you're going to go ahead and match up the tire size right there. Okay? And you're going to go ahead and see whether or not the tires match the vehicle. Right here you have a lug nut, and right there is a stud, a lug stud. Okay? The reason that one is not on there is we've had some damage and had to do some replacing of parts, okay, which we are consistently in progress of doing in our program, okay? So the big deal with that is we understand that students do make errors every now and again. Sometimes they forget simple concepts. Sometimes the easy thing escapes them because they get so focused on the high-end technical things. But we're here to make sure everyone, by the time they're done, gets everything squared away the right way, and that they're going to be safe. So if that costs us a stud here or there, or a stripped bolt here or there, or a little leak, or a nick, or a cut, you know, or something like that, that's okay, as long as they're not making a mess, you know, and doing anything that's just born out of negligence. As long as we're careful and we're trying our best, we're all going to be fine. Okay? So the next thing that I'm going to show you, okay, is going to end up probably being an oil change video. So go ahead, and I want you to study the very first parts of the car that I showed you. Get used to that. Get used to the industry stuff. Okay, the careers, the structure of the industry, everything in those PowerPoints. And then they're going to be fine. You're going to have a good start off. And then we'll be able to start getting into safety and all the technical things thereafter. All right? I want you to have a good day. Take it easy.